Hey guys, welcome to Star Wars Timeline. My name is Ben. Today, once again, I have lovely Meg from Meg Reviews. We are continuing our discussion of the new Jedi Order. We already had 2 podcasts where we started, and we have this very ambitious goal of trying to cover the entire new Jedi Order series. Some of you guys may ask, now what is this? So the new Jedi Order, in a nutshell, is a series of Star Wars Legends books which were written between 1999 and 2003. Those are 19-book epic series which had novels, it had ebooks, and as 2014 are considered now parts of Legends, the stuff that came before the modern canon. Now, these are the events that cover from 21 to 25 years after the original trilogy. We see Luke Skywalker restoring the new Jedi Order, and we see a new major threat in the form of invasion from these intergalactic invaders called the Yuuzhan Vong. Guys, this is going to be a spoiler-on discussion because we're basically running through all of the books. Meg has read them recently. I've read them years back. We're going to talk about this, compare notes, and just discuss the next books. But before we do that, Meg, please introduce yourself for fans who are seeing us for the first time. Tell us where they can find your channel, what kind of stuff and reviews that you do.
Yeah, hi, I'm on YouTube as Meg Reviews. I mostly reread the old Legends books, sort of try to look at them with a more critical eye and evaluate like what worked for me, what didn't work for me. I do read some of the new canon books as well, and I'm also on Instagram as The Meg Reviews, where I mostly post pictures of Star Wars outfits.
Mm-hmm. Which, guys, I think one of the first things, I keep mentioning this, I saw your reviews on YouTube, randomly just discovered your channel because I was curious if other fans are doing these old Star Wars book reviews. And I really enjoyed how you did them in costume and you just take time to like really prepare and go into detail behind each book. So I would say your reviews are not on the surface, they're very in-depth. So I think for those of you guys who are watching, who've read these books or are curious about Star Wars Legends and you want an expert outlook on things and a really, really deep analysis of like character arcs and, you know, story beats and stuff like this, highly recommend Meg Reviews channel. She does awesome stuff. But in the meantime, tell us, what are you reading at the moment? What are kind of reviews of videos you're splicing together? What are you working on currently?
Yeah, so I just finished up reading the novelization of episode 2, Attack the Clones. I'm next moving on to Tatooine Ghost. And I'm sorry to say, it has taken me over a month, and I still have not finished the young adult book, the newest one in the High Republic series. I'm struggling.
Oh, I'm so behind on the High Republic. I can't tell you. You know what it is? I feel sometimes like I oversaturate myself with Star Wars content. So I'm just taking a break. I don't want to do this for the sake of like throwing it on the YouTube channel, like, and just get the check mark off. Like, hey, I reviewed it. I really want to enjoy this stuff, you know, as a fan too. Guys, so let me give you a very brief synopsis where Meg and I have finished in our last podcast, and then we're going to talk about the next duology in this series. As I mentioned before, these are 19-book series. Last time we covered the Dark Tide 1 and 2. So very, very briefly, just where we ended the last time. Huge tragedy incurs upon this galaxy. Ithor falls. It's completely poisoned by this devastating Yuuzhan Vong bioweapon. Alliance has also won its first major victory by destroying the Vong ship called Legacy of Torment. We know that Dian Lan takes over the Vong army, and Corran Horn kills Commander Shadow Shai, which once again was a major victory. But the New Republic blames the Jedi Order, and they call Corran Horn the killer of Ithor. So now he's exiled to Corellia. We also address Mara Jade's illness, and we know that... let me see, take a look at my notes here. We also see that Kip Duran faces his major battle and loss versus the Vong attacks. Basically, his entire squadron is devastated. We'll also encounter Chewie's tragic death, right, in the novels before that, the Vector Prime. And we see a major foreshadowing things to come. And I think one of the comments that you mentioned, too, was that it was kind of hopeful, but it was a very bittersweet victory for the Republic. That was basically our synopsis of the Dark Tide 1 and 2. Now we're moving with the next duology in the series, which later on you guys will see trilogies of books as well. But this is the next follow-up duology. These are the Agents of Chaos. Book 1 is called Hero's Trial, and it's written by James Luceno. It was published in August of 2000. Guys, I'm just going to very briefly give you some of what a synopsis, and then Meg, I want to ask you quite a few questions on this book, if you're okay with this. So the war is in full swing now against these intergalactic invaders, the Yuzong Vong. There's a lot of anti-Jedi and even anti-Alliance sentiments going about because they feel that the government is not ready for this kind of task, and some citizens even side with the Vong. We have some Vong collaborators in the form of this human peace brigade, and they try to side with them and say, well, maybe the Jedi are wrong, and maybe you can come in and establish a new sort of new world order. But the irony is that this human peace brigade has this icon where a human hand, xenophobic hand, is reaching out to these aliens as equals, but in the Vong language, there's no such word as equals or peace. Peace basically means submission to them. And Vong, after their first experiences with Luke Skywalker, Mara Jade, and being thwarted by the Jedi, see Jedi Order as a major threat. So they try to develop a new strategy. They want to send defectors with this new bioweapon. For those of you guys who don't know, Yuzong Vong entirely use only biotechnology, even their ships are grown like living creatures. And they want to send this infiltrator with these spore to kill the Jedi and New Alliance leadership with one bold stroke. Enter Priestess Lan of the Deception sect. She's the worshipper of the trickster goddess Yunharla. And her partner in crime, Vergiri or Vergiri, not exactly sure how to pronounce her name, who is this mysterious Fosh creature. So my first question to you, Meg, is what were your thoughts on this new duet, Priestess Lan and Vergiri?
So for Priestess Lan, I felt like, and I think part of this is just the fact that so far in the new Jedi Order books, other than Nom and Nor, our Yuzong Vong villains have sort of been like villains of the week. They show up in one book and then they're gone. So Priestess Lan, she gives me very much like Pulp Fiction, not the movie, but like the old genre vibe. She's like beautiful, treacherous, she seems like she's good, but she's not because she's harboring this bioweapon and she doesn't make it to live another day and trick them again. So Elan sort of felt not highly fleshed out to me. I did like getting to see, a different part of the Yuzong Vong culture, that she's a priestess of the trickster goddess. But I was sort of like, she was okay. But I really liked Vergere. She's so mysterious. She's not a Yuzong Vong. She's an unknown alien species. She's like Elan's familiar, almost like a pet, but she's very intelligent. And she definitely has some agenda at play that the reader is not aware of at all, because she's helping the Vong, she's with Elan, but then at the very end, she helps the Jedi. So I found Vergere very interesting and was interested in seeing how her character would be developed in later books.
Yeah. It's reasonable to say that neither Elan or Vergiri are fully fleshed out in this book, but what I praise James Luceno for is that he creates characters with mystique and they're layered. You don't know where their allegiances fully lie. You don't know where their agendas are, but there's enough foreshadowing for you as a reader to say like, hey, what's next? What's happening with this character? I really want to find out. And I always enjoyed his writing in that respect. And I'm really glad that you call Vergiri a familiar, which is a very, very interesting narrative trope, which I kind of didn't formulate it that way in my mind, but that's what it appears to be as you say it now. Because, the books like prequel era, Rogue Planet and so forth, or Outbound Flight, where she kind of glimmers here and there trying to flesh her out, they come out later, if I'm not mistaken. The new Jedi Order books came before. So at this point, guys, since we're in this point of time discussing this series, she's pretty much an unknown element. We don't know what she's all about. Now, with Elan, Priestess Elan, I really wanted to kind of push that topic and talk about her a little bit more because she's quite different from previous Vong who take different social status in their society. We had Nomanor, you had Shadao Shai, you had Yomenkar. Yomenkar is basically an executor, some kind of like boots on the ground soldier. Shadao Shai is a commander. Nomanor is an infiltrator slash spy. Now, she is completely different. She brings a whole baggage of Vong culture with her. And I just wanted to ask your impression on her social and religious position within that society. What kind of impression did that make on you?
Yeah, I definitely got the sense. Well, up to this point, we've seen lots of military guys, and Nominor is sort of a political agent, but I side him with the military because he works so closely with them.
Right.
And I think Elan shows how key their religion is to their culture, that just the fact that the priest and priestesses of the different gods are like so highly ranked. Like we're told that her father, I think, is a priest, and he's like really high up there, that these people have a huge amount of emphasis and in shaping what the Yuuzhan do. Like they're pivotal to the path the Yuuzhan have taken. And yeah, it gives us a different look into their society, that we've just seen the military side, and now we're seeing the religious side, and just like what they place emphasis on, that, you know, violence, but also deception, tricking people is like key to their culture.
Yeah, it almost makes you feel that it's a science fiction take on the Crusaders, because there is this spiritual component to it, and we all know from real world history how you can weaponize religion for, you know, your zealous behavior, and you can invade other people and say, well, we're justified because that's what our gods dictate. It's out of our hands. There's powers at play which are stronger than us. And I was immediately taken with Elan, because in many, especially fantasy books, when they try to describe the seductress type of women that have an effect on you, they're beautiful literally on every page. They just, the authors constantly stress, oh, she's beautiful. Oh, she's good. It's like not necessarily objectifying women, but just like playing it too much. Yeah. In this respect, James Luceno is an expert. He gives you so much stage presence from Elan without telling you overly too much. Oh, that she's gorgeous. Oh, she's too smart. Oh, she's such a devout believer. She's such a complex persona that I was immediately taken with it. Also as a guy too, I'm like, oh, you know, she's beautiful. That's interesting. You also see her on the awesome cover of these trade paperbacks books that I have. She looks interesting. She almost has this like Asian look to her, obviously with like influenced by maybe like Chinese culture, stuff like this. Obviously, Yuuzhan kind of sounds alike with the language too. So I was taken there. But what I completely loved is that spiritual component. Not just from the perspective that these are religious zealots, but also that there's depth to them as well. They are not these cardboard bad guys, lowbrow brutes who are like, oh, kill galaxy. Like, there's more going on there. What drives these people? And this connection to experiencing pain. And only through pain you find meaning in life. Like, oh, wow, this is pretty deep stuff. And because I didn't have a point of reference, I don't think up to this point I've never read any aliens, which I'm sure existed, that are completely biotechnology driven, but also worship gods. Like, okay, pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it usually seems, at least in science fiction, when you have those like biotech cultures, they're advanced and like they've moved beyond it. But with the Yuuzhan, like their biotechnology is directly tied into their religion, and they're interconnected.
Yeah. So moving right along with the first book, just keep on with the synopsis. The Vong stage this feint attack on Ord Mantell. Elan and Vergiri duet, they're captured by the New Republic, intentionally so. By now we know they're the double agent. They're captured on the planet Wayland, which comes from the older original Thrawn trilogy. So they board the pleasure yacht, Queen of Empire, bound for Coruscant. And they want to make this false treaty where they want to encounter the New Republic leadership and the Jedi, and they try to kill both with one stroke with this spore that they have developed. I wanted to ask you the Elan's approach to handling situations versus the direct military strikes. For example, War Master Tsavon La.
Well, for Elon, it's all deception based. So
Hmm.
to get the New Republic to trust them, Yuuzhan Vong attack them on Wayland. And that's, what verifies her claims like, I'm a defector.
Hmm.
They don't want me to get this information to you. And then the Vong try to kill them. So the Republic are basically like, oh, she's legit.
Yeah.
I really loved. It was
Yeah.
like, yeah, so easy, but it made them trust her like that, and she
Hmm.
could have gotten very close to the New Republic leadership and to the Jedi because of it.
Yeah, I found just the contrast so stark. I'm like, hold on a second. So these are full blown warriors, and they pride themselves on direct confrontation. But then once again, once we get into this book, we understand layers that not all Vong think alike, which once again
Yeah.
makes this culture very complex. I would honestly compare them to something like from Star Trek, like Krogans from
Mhm.
Mass Effect trilogy, maybe something like that, where it's a deeply layered culture that has different facets to it. And also here, we had up to this point very military, kind of concrete, straightforward, linear approach to invading this galaxy. When she brought over this trickster goddess, and then she's plotting and scheming, and she's a double agent. And even when she's listening to her commanders, she's like, yeah, okay, all right, I got your orders. Hold on a second. I belong to a different sect here. So
Yeah.
this is what we're going to do. Your military commands are not ultimate authority on me. So that immediately captivated me because it was such an interesting lore and world building device, telling us that there's different facets there. But what of Vergiri? Who is she at this point? What was your impression? Like, what's her? Because you mentioned earlier that she has some type of agenda. Did you feel that at this point in the story, her agendas align with Elon's or not?
I wasn't sure because it seemed like she was perfectly fine going along with Elon, going right into the heart of Coruscant and just wiping all these people out. But then she hears the name Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what she thinks, but you could tell that she's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And she gives Han something to help Luke and Mara at the end. So I think that really caught my interest because it was like, okay, this is someone who's willing to go along with the Vong, but here's not just here's about Jedi, but here's
Right.
about Skywalker. It is like, oh. And so I'm like, why are you helping them? And
Mm-hmm.
what are your aims here? Yes, she's so mysterious at this point, and I think that makes you want to read more about her because you don't know anything she's planning, but you do know that yeah, this is someone who has spent decades with the Vong and
Mm-hmm.
seems to at some point have allied herself with them, but why?
Hmm. I sort of want to compare notes with you here because when I was reading her, I don't know why I immediately thought of Yoda and specifically the original trilogy Yoda because when you encounter him in that trilogy of films, he is mysterious. There's only allusions to what the Jedi Order was like before that trilogy, but we don't have all the cards on the table. We don't know what they were like. We don't know why Anakin betrayed them even from
No.
the original trilogy, right? And Yoda is this mysterious figure, and with him interchanging between the comedic moments where he's being this buffoon, he makes fun of Luke, and then having this very serious, sober feel that hey, you're our last hope. Nothing is what it seems from the first glance with Yoda. When he
Yeah.
jokes, when he's serious, what his goals are, when he says, well, Obi-Wan Kenobi says, he was our last hope. And Yoda says, no, there is another. And you're like, oh, pause for a second here. What's going on? What are your motives here? What are you trying to accomplish with this boy? And when I was reading Vergiri, I'm also here. And it's funny that in retrospect, that you and I, we know the rest of the story, her
Yeah.
past, where she comes from. But even at that point, I was like, huh. Her familiarity with Skywalkers. Obviously, the Star Wars prequel films were already in full swing, and we were getting that additional background story on the Skywalkers that suddenly this last name is special now. In the
Yeah.
original trilogy, Luke Skywalker rises to the occasion and he makes his last name prominent through his own deeds. There's nothing
Right.
special about his bloodline. There is no midichlorians yet that dictate how powerful you'll be in the Force. His actions make him a hero. right? And in the prequel trilogy, now there's a whole idea of the prophecy. Well, now indeed, Skywalkers are special. And Anakin is the chosen one. He's the Messiah. He will restore balance to the galaxy. And what's her angle here? What's her interest? And once again, I think my attraction to her was very much the same that it was the original Yoda. I just wanted to figure out what she's all about. Oh, she's so mysterious. What's going on there? Anyway, moving right along with the synopsis, do you have anything else to add on the Vergere before we move on?
No, I just think too with Vergere, like when you initially see her, you're like, oh, this is someone's sidekick, someone's pet. But those like flashes of intelligence are what you make you realize, like, oh, there's something more going on here, which is very Yoda-like, that you see her and you like underestimate her. And then the more you see her, the more you're like, oh, there's a lot more going on here, and I am not aware of this.
That's a fantastic point, because that's exactly what I did. You're literally reading my mind. I have underestimated her in the beginning. Right. We exchanged words like a familiar, a pet, and also her diminutive size, right? She's very small. She's like 2 feet tall. She's Yoda size, basically. I'm like,
she's a little bird.
Right. And I'm like, who is this little bird thing? Like, she's colorful. She looks weird. I think at that point, I had one of the Star Wars encyclopedias, and there was indeed a picture of her. And also, she got the Nagano artist, the Japanese artist, I keep forgetting his first name, who illustrated a lot of the new Jedi Order Japanese covers. He also had Vergere on the covers. And I'm looking at her, it's like, who's this exotic parrot Star Wars creature? Like, she's insignificant. Well, just wait and see, guys. Anyway, moving on in the plot here. We understand that Han is distancing himself from the family, from the, alliance affairs. He pretty much is a loner. He's still grieving for Chewie's death. He goes after Ragdesh, who ends up this smuggler. His name is known in the underground world. And we learn that he is now the leader of this peace brigade, this xenophobes who for some reason decide to side with the Vong because that's the alliance they want to make. And he goes in with his old smuggler ally called Roa. He also happens to board Queen of the Empire yacht and with the new alliance. And with this, he finds this newfound friend or pal at this point called Droma, who is a part of this Rin aliens who are for some reason hated by the rest of the galaxy. I wanted to ask you, what was your impression of Han's misadventure? And was his grief for Chewie in character, and was it justified to prolong for this long? We're already in the third book past Chewie's death. So first question is, I guess I asked too many questions. First question is, how did you feel about Han's misadventure and what he's dealing with at the moment?
I really liked Han's arc for the Dark Tide duology. We just saw Han briefly. He was not doing well with Chewie's death. He was mostly drinking.
Right.
And so here we see that he's finally come to the breaking point, and it's Chewie's memorial service that does that. Like, he doesn't want to be around his family anymore. He doesn't want to be around his Wookiee family anymore, who offer to take on Chewie's life debt. And he says no. And so he's on a path for revenge. He wants revenge against the Vong for what they did. He teams up with Roa, who also wants revenge against the Vong because they killed his wife. And it was hard to read Han so unlike himself, so dark and humorless. But I felt like I could see how Han would get there, how the loss of Chewie and dwelling on it for so long would lead him to just completely lash out like that. Because he's basically going through the steps of grief, but he's been sort of stuck.
Right.
And can't reconcile this and, get back with his family. He can't get over Chewie's death.
I mean, it's a total heartbreak. Chewie was his first family before Leia, before Luke. That's his pal. That's his buddy for life. And I didn't feel that it was particularly out of character for him. But you're right. It was completely unlike Han because of this trilogy, because people change, especially in light of something terrible like this. And he is drinking. He's angry. He wants to lash out. I think it's a similar conversation that we can bring into Star Wars sequels. I think a lot of fans felt that Rian Johnson disrespected Luke Skywalker's character because he introduces a whole new story involved with that. because Luke off screen fulfills his destiny. He restores the Jedi Order. He has performed everything that the galaxy has asked him to. What else could you ask of this man? And when the tragedy comes from the least expected source, your own blood and flesh and blood, your nephew stabs you in the back, and he takes away half of your students and kills the rest of them, yeah, that would kind of change you. And I don't know if fans reacted betrayed to Han at this point, because I didn't interview people at that time that were reading it. I just conversed with a couple of my buddies, and they're like, oh man, this is a really different version of Han. Like, did you feel that it was respectful of James Luceno to write this kind of Han, or was it just stretching too far into this whole grief thing, and you wanted to just to be done with it and keep going on with the Han story?
I feel like I thought it fitting for Han. It was hard to read though, because like how to see what he's going through. And this is a character, especially if you've read all the previous books, that you've grown to love, and that he'd grown into this like man who loves his family, is dedicated to them, and then to just like walk away from them for revenge is really hard to read. I did wonder a little bit, just like the timeline, because I guess I think it makes sense that it could take 6 months for like this to fester and boil over for Han. There's a part of me that also wonders if it would have also worked for the Agents of Chaos duology, or at least for Hero's Trial, to occur concurrently with the Dark Tide books, so that while they're fighting on Dantooine, while they're fighting on Ithor, Han is off on this quest for revenge. I mean, of course, it's like meaningless speculation because these books are 20 years old, but I did wonder a little bit of that, if like it took too long for him to reach the boiling point. But then again, there are people who, you know, suffer a loss like that and don't lash out for like years.
Yeah, it's such an individual thing, right? Grief, right? And facing tragedy like this. To be honest with you, I didn't mind it at all. I was on board with it because I love Han so much. I was living through this pain with him. Like, oh man, it's like he tries to. I think Han is the type of character who addresses his problems by not necessarily running away from them, but focusing on something, a goal. He's the type of person that I think it's characteristic of many men in general. When a lot of men don't show their emotions up front. And when you're faced with something that is so overwhelming, like a death of a friend, the only way that you can begin to even reconcile it is by giving yourself a goal. Forget this for a moment, put it on the side. It's not disrespecting your close friend Chewie, who just gone, because how could he? He'll never forget him. That's the whole point of it. But then give me a task, give me a target, give me an enemy, whatever shape or form it might come. And, once I strike there, then I can come back and say, well, you know what? Chewie's demise was not in vain. That he saved my son. He helped, save innocent lives. And that's what it is. Anything else there to add before we move on?
I think, too, it's a really small thing, but a thing that helps is that at Chewie's memorial service, Anakin gives his father something that Chewie had given him. And Han's sort of mad about it. Like, why would you give this away? Chewie gave this to you. And then it ends up saving his life in the end. And I think that makes a big step towards him reconciling with his son, that like, he cared enough to give me this thing, one of the only things he had to remember Chewie by, and it saved me. And so it's like, he's not ready to get back with his family at the end of Hero's Trial, but that tiny step on Anakin's part really helped.
Yeah, and this is why I love James Luceno. When you read a lot of modern sci-fi and fantasy books, they're very cinematic. It feels like it's a generation of writers who are raised watching movies first and reading literature second, because a lot of, and that's not necessarily a criticism or a bad thing, but when you read a lot of books, chapters and even individual scenes, they feel like staged movie scenes, and everything is what you see is what you get. With authors like Luceno, they're very layered and they're very literary, where he will create a little device here, literally device, a little prop or a little side character, a little quote, a line, and then he'll reintroduce it later on and play on it and tie it all up together. So, well, it's almost like listening to a concept heavy metal album where each song and each lyric connects with everything well, so organically, so well, that when you read it as a whole, it just adds layers of enjoyment. It's like, oh crap, this happened before. And if it was like an insignificant little, I guess we could say, mask, we'll talk about it a little bit more. And then later on, when it plays there, and it's not just something that is practical in the scene, but it has an emotional and symbology behind it. You're like, oh man, yeah, add James Lucena to my favorite list of authors, because he has that power to do that. To summarize, the ending of this first book is, so now the focus realigns. This individual parties are after this duet. Peace Brigade Senator Vicky Shesh, who we discover later on is a Vong spy, they believe that Elon and Vergiri are indeed true defectors. They don't get the point that these are double agents because of lack of information. And Vong plans fail. Han is the first to realize that the pair are double agents, and they battle on the yacht ensues, right? The spores are released with intention to kill Han, actually. But they end up killing Peace Brigade members. The irony, right? And it is what you mentioned before. It's Chewie's device, it's breather device that saves Han, and it's presented as Anakin's gift. So Elon dies alone. Her plans are foiled. She's gone. And Vergiri's tear is a gift for Han and Droma, and it ends up healing Mara's Vong illness, or at least it suppresses this to this point. So a lot of stuff is happening. At the end, were you impressed with the foiled plans plot twist?
I think it was, because it was basically like, she's just a walking super bioweapon.
Right.
How were they going to deal with this? Because all she has to do is breathe on people and she can kill everyone in the room. So I did think, like, once Han and Droma got with Elon and Vergere, I was like, okay, something's going to happen that tips Han off that something is off. And then there's going to be some sort of showdown, and like, they can't kill Han. But so it was like, I sort of knew the outcome. I didn't know what was going to happen with Vergere, but I knew the outcome. But how it played out was not what I expected and enjoyable to read.
Not enjoyable.
Well, no, I guess I did enjoy it. Yeah.
Oh, you did enjoy. Okay, sorry. Yeah. just to clarify. Yeah, but also what happens in that time. I also, I sort of felt that impending doom, like, oh my gosh, she's really going to pull this off. And that was part of the character's impact to me. I was like, oh man, she's cool, she's smart, she's beautiful. She has this connection to a religious sect that is not entirely answerable to the military. So she's acting on her own accord. But she's really going to pull this thing off. God damn it. How is like the new alliance is going to figure this out? They're too busy handling the war on all fronts. Oh, it's the guy who is not as busy, whose mind is clouded by grief for his friend, Han. Yep. And Han is an intelligent guy. He's smart. He knows what he's doing. He wasn't born yesterday. Throughout the original trilogy, he's the guy who delivers. Sometimes Luke comes up with the plans, but Han executes well. And I was like, okay, all right. I wish I could have seen those plans executed and so huge, devastating blow dealt to the New Republic. But yeah, if anyone is going to stop her, if it's not Luke Skywalker directly, then yeah, I would believe Han. He's capable enough. But also, I wanted to ask, this whole battle on the yacht at the end is very, very hectic. I mean, there's a lot of things. It's like Luceno, the author, he's preparing you for things. He's setting things up here, these all separate arcs, and then he just blows it all in your face. Were you at any point confused? Do you like this kind of approach to a climatic scene in the book?
I guess for me, for action scenes, when I'm reading them, I'm trying to visualize them. So I'm able to visualize some things better than others. If it's like a space battle, sometimes I get really lost, especially if it's like X-Wings.
Same here.
And I'm like, I don't know what's happening. But I feel like here, since it's all, physical, like they're on the yacht, I was able to see like, okay, and Han pushes her in here, and now they're in this room. So it was pretty hectic. I think some of the stuff on the big what was it, the Queen of the Empire, whatever, I couldn't follow as well. But when it's in a smaller space, I have an easier time following the action. I think because I could visualize the
Gotcha.
fight a little bit better.
So you basically have to find yourself spatially and just to try to understand, comprehend what the scene is.
Yeah. And even sometimes if it I just read Attack of the Clones, and the fight between Jango and Obi-Wan on Kamino, I was completely lost in the book. I could not really follow what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, so it's like, sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. I do think I got it here, but more the later bit, the end, the more tight stuff.
Mm-hmm. See, when I was reading those books, I was 7, maybe 8 years in the country. And again, my English was not nearly as good as it is now, which I still feel is somewhat inferior. There's a lot more to learn. But the idea of a multi-arc or parallel subplot kind of storytelling was a little bit daunting for me at first. It was overwhelming. Too many names to remember, too many different planets. You lose track, especially if you're the type of habitual reader who like read a chapter and wait a week and then read the next chapter. I tried to read them quickly, like maybe a week, 2 weeks tops per book. For me, casual speed is a week per book. And as I was reading it, what really helped me along with James Luceno's style is that, and again, it was just a habit of reading those sorts of stories over and over and over again. And then you got into the habit of like, okay, this is not going to be a linear A to point B kind of story. This has a multi-story arc or separate parallel branching storylines going on. With Luceno, it felt like with these Agents of Chaos books, he begins sort of like this corridor, kind of like focused, narrow story, and then he diverts your heroes into separate areas, giving them different tasks, and then he all brings it together. He's just a master craftsman of storytelling. He knows exactly what he's doing. I also noticed that with a lot of authors, when they do this sort of type of story, they constantly reiterate and repeat names. They repeat concepts, where they repeat the bioweapon's name, the gods' names. So you always reinforce the idea like, oh, okay, this is where I'm in the book. He treats the audience with respect as like, hey, if you're in for a long haul with these books, right? They're not shorter books. They're pretty long. He knows what he's doing there. And at the end of this book, again, want to focus a little bit on Vergiri's. Where are you at in terms of her motivations and her parting gift to Skywalkers? What did that signal to you?
For me, it definitely signaled that she had a past that we didn't know about, that her time before joining the Yuuzhan Vong will be significant. And I have to say, well, especially with what happens later for Vergere, with her gift, I was like, oh my gosh, she's good. She will help them. She's on their side. Like, what a gift, especially once we see the results with Mara. I was like, oh, she's gonna be like super important. And so I feel like I got the super important part, but I didn't quite. I got like, oh, she's good, and it's like, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something controversial here. To this day, I can't fully put her into one or the other extreme, good or bad. It's almost like a necessary evil. It's almost like a gray Jedi concept, which the fans have developed over the years, where, I never saw, I grew up with the original trilogy. I never saw the Force as something that has a good or a bad side. It's how people interact through it. Basically, that was my understanding how Yoda explains it to Luke in the Empire Strikes Back. Because Vader is a practitioner of the Jedi religion in the original trilogy, because that's what Tarkin tells him. You are the last of your fallen religion. So you could be a good or a bad Jedi who experiences the Force, and how you interact with it, through which lens or filter you interact with it, those are the results that you're going to reap. But with Vergiri, it's like she's looking past the motivations of humans or religious dogmas, or even, what's the word I'm looking for? The word I'm looking for is morals. Human morals, which is a human concept. She's looking past that point, what is good or bad for people. She's looking at the distant future. She's like, I need a tool. I need to prepare somebody who will have a balanced view of the Force and act accordingly out of it. So her party gift to Mara Jade's illness, you know what? At the end of the first Agents of Chaos books, I still wasn't sold that she's a good person or a bad person necessarily. I'm like, she has an agenda. What the hell is it? Can we please get to it? She also seemed like Yoda-like type of character because she's seeing past the occurring events. She's looking into the future, whether she literally had visions or not, but she's playing the long game, which the rest of the galaxy is just preoccupied playing, even when it comes from the perspective of the Yuzong Fang. If they're the ones concerning themselves with invading this galaxy because of resources, because they need a new home to live in, she's like, no. I'm looking past that. I'm looking into the future. Anything else that you might want to add, and I'll jump into the second book.
I think for Hero's Trial, so Hero's Trial, when we talked about Dark Tide, we talked about how it was originally supposed to be a trilogy and then the middle book got cut out. For Agents of Chaos, originally James Luceno was just supposed to write one book, which I assume was going to be Jedi Eclipse. But when they took a book away from Dark Tide, they gave him an extra book. So I just really love that even if it wasn't initially in the plan, we just got this deep dive into how Han's dealing with the situation. And that's what I enjoy the most about Hero's Trial, is just getting to spend that time with Han and seeing how he's dealing with everything.
And guys, this is why you go to Meg's channel, because when you want to know the background, how the books were written, which I didn't know until this moment, you got the expert right here. I can't, now in retrospect, I can't imagine these two being just a single book because they would have crammed too much and there would have been too little time. Because arguably, both of these books are character studies. There's tons of action happening here. There's a lot of progression in the war, but ultimately, these books are about people on both sides and what they're capable of, how are they dealing with this, and what drives them as people. Anyway, now we're moving on to Agents of Chaos, Book 2, Jedi Eclipse, also James Luceno, written in October of the same year. I would not be surprised if he was writing both books as one huge thing, and they just basically split it right down the middle, because later on they even had the hardcover edition, which brings both books together. I really need to jump on eBay and pick this up. But anyway, let me give you also a quick synopsis here. What's that?
They've gone up in price. They used to be pretty inexpensive, but unfortunately, all the new Jedi Order omnibuses are more now. Yeah,
the omnibuses are a little bit more expensive, guys. Let's actually diverge just a tiny bit here and talk about picking up these hardcover Legends books. I started collecting my Bantam era books because I love the covers. I mean, I've collected every single trade paperback back in the day. I have all of them original without the yellow whatever banner, but I wanted also to collect the hardcover ones, and I'm such a purist, I need them to be in perfect, clear condition, just for like Drew Struzan's or other artists. And you know what? I picked these up last year before, when the pandemic started, with my pandemic unemployment money. And they weren't terribly expensive. I got some of them like $50, $40. Manageable prices, but those are just tons of fun to collect. Are you picking up any like recent books from like Legend series in a hardcover or anything like that?
So I've gotten a few recently, because when I started rereading them, I basically had the Thrawn trilogy, I had the Hand of Thrawn duology, and then I had like random ones. Like I have Luke Skywalker in the Shadows of Mindor. So it's sort of been, as I reread them, if there's one that I'm like, oh, I love that. I love that one. Then I try to pick it up in hardcover. I will say for the new Jedi Order, I already had them all in paperback.
Yeah.
So I would love them in hardcover, but at this point, I sort of feel like I don't know if I need 2 copies of them.
Yeah. I don't know, actually, if I'm not mistaken, and you could correct me later on, but I don't believe that every new Jedi Order book had a hardcover. I do know that a couple of them do. Vector Prime definitely has a hardcover, but I think some of them were only trades.
Yeah, so 5 of them were hardcover. So basically, like the big ones each year: Vector Prime, Balance Point, Star by Star, Destiny's Way, The Unifying Force. Science Fiction Book Club put out the other ones in hardcover. So the duologies and trilogies are omnibuses, but you can also get like Dark Journey
Mhm.
and Traitor in hardcover. They're smaller though than
I think I might have seen
the
them
other one.
on eBay.
Yeah.
I might have seen them. Once again, guys, you want the book expert? Here, I thought I knew how many books there are. Meg, you know the deal. Anyway, moving on with this Jedi Eclipse book. Once again, let me just start with the synopsis, and then I have questions for you. So, Han and Droma's, this new alien's friendship develops, and they're
Mhm.
looking for Droma's family now. Leia makes overtures from Hapis clusters. She goes to her friend Prince Isildur, and she asks them to either help collaborate with this war in any capacity. Vergiri's tear suppresses Mars' illness. Kib Duran's one of his retinue of Jedi. Kib Duran is a type of illustrious young Jedi who thinks he's smarter than Luke Skywalker. He now has a bunch of Jedi who kind of like in his corner. And one of his followers, Ruth Skidder, he's willingly lets himself be captured by the Vong because he tries to get near them and try to understand them, specifically their biotechnology. And one of the technology he's after is their Yamamusk world brains, these battle coordinators that which coordinate the rest of their troops. Um, and in the meantime, the new alliance and the Jedi are kind of like going back and forth, trying to figure out what will be the next Yuuzhan Vong target, which strategic place will be hit by the Vong fleet next. In the meantime, Vong are not wasting time. They're making treaties. They go in and make a pact with the Hutt cartel. But Hutts, being the smart guys that they are, for those of you guys who know Legends, their cartels have lasted for thousands of years. They know what they're doing. They might look like incapable slugs, but they know what they're doing in terms of grand strategy. So they're secretly passing information along to the New Republic. In the meantime, Jason and Anakin travel to the Center Point Station, a key strategic piece of technology which is pivotal to this war. And there is finally an attack from the Yuuzhan Vong. They make a very unexpected move and they attack Fondar's shipyards. They want to strike at the New Alliance's technology, A, because they hate technology in general, and B, because it's going to deliver a major blow to the Alliance's war efforts. In the meantime, the Hapen fleet joins the battle. They agree with Leia. They go in. Prince Isildur, he's a close friend to the Skywalker family. And in the meantime, the Hutts openly betray the Vong. Tons of information I just spilled. Meg, at any point besides my question, if you want to jump in and just discuss these events in general, please go ahead. But my first question is, once again, I said, there's a lot of stuff happening in this book. It's much bigger than the first chapter.
Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't imagine how it could have been only one book in general. Do you like this kind of approach that we discussed earlier, this multi-story arc branching story where each of our heroes is given a task and they're thrown into different parts of the galaxy?
So I guess, here's the thing. So I do like when we have multiple arcs to follow. I do feel like sometimes it can get overwhelming. And I did get that sense from Jedi Eclipse at times where there were just so many stories to follow. We've got Worth, we've got Han and Droma, we've got like, and we cut back and forth and
Right.
and they're all over the place. And then they all come together at the end. And I like that. But at the same time, I also wonder sometimes, to be nitpicky, how realistic is that for like everyone to be here in this climactic battle at the end? So I guess I'm like of two minds about Jedi Eclipse, that I like that the story opens up and branches out to more characters after how tightly focused Hero's Trial was on Han and on the defector plot. But at the same time, I almost felt overwhelmed at times by all the stuff that was going on and all the things we had to check in on, especially with Han's story. I would have liked to spend more time with him, but since we have so much to cover, we keep cutting away.
So you think it could have been a trilogy?
I think so. I think he had enough material that he could have if they were willing to give him a third book, I would have read it. Because I feel that way a lot of times about duologies, where sometimes with trilogies, I feel like there wasn't enough stuff. And so the second book especially will be just like maneuvering things in place. But
Hmm.
with duology, sometimes I feel like, oh, I wish there was a middle book there. I wish there was a little bit more time to add to Han's story or to add more to the Hapens or something
Yeah.
like that.
Also, we feel like the James Luceno wants to make the New Alliance appear that it's spread thin. You know,
Yeah.
we dealt with 20 odd years of constant warfare, but now, and but the New Alliance has come out on top. There is legitimate government. Leia is there. Mon Mothma is there. Everything seems to be legit. Um, did you feel that Luceno's writing, like, did it convince you that the New Alliance is facing an insurmountable odds here?
So I liked getting to see things like in the very beginning, it's Gyndine or Gynden or whatever. We see it fall because
Mm-hmm.
Leia's there. And actually, where Skitter's there too. That's how he allows himself to get captured by the
Right.
Vaughn. So I liked getting to see the examples of planets falling. I do have to admit that if it weren't for the galaxy map, and specifically the galaxy map that we get in the next book in Balance Point, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't know like what has fallen and what's not. That map, if you could see the map in Balance Point,
Right.
I think it's the map in Balance Point and then the map in Star by Star. Those really help because you see like the arm of the Yuuzhan invasion, like which worlds they've bulldozed, which ones are still free. Um, yeah, and it sounds weird to say you got to look at the map, but
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
the feeling in Jedi Eclipse, like I kept having to look at the map and be like, oh, okay, cross that one off. That one's gone.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of maps, I don't know if you've ever played BioWare's Mass Effect trilogy of games. In the third game, so it's basically a game series which is inspired by Star Wars because BioWare was known for developing, right, the Knights of the Old Republic Star Wars video games, part one, and then part two was continued by Obsidian. But Mass Effect basically continues that trend. It's a whole new galaxy sweeping kind of like story. And in the third game, yes, indeed, there is an ultimate war akin to New Alliance versus Vong. Something. These new invaders, intergalactic invaders, come into that galaxy and they attack the humans and allied alien species. But there was also a galaxy map, and a lot of fans' criticism, including my younger brother, was like, dude, I wish they showed more planets falling. I wish they showed more open scale kind of war, because if it was not for that galactic map, which shows you literally where the bad guys are attacking, there wasn't enough time spent because of monetary constraints or because of just sheer scale of the game, which third Mass Effect, I would say, is pretty ginormous RPG game. But even there, they couldn't just show you everything, and you had to rely a lot on the map. Meg, also wanted to ask you, obviously, we can't move on without asking, tell me about the Hans and Droma's developing buddy bromance relationship. How did you feel about that?
Yeah. So in Heroes Trial. I just completed the two books.
Mm-hmm.
In Heroes Trial, I felt bad for Droma at times because Han was, he's so deep in his grief that he is just mean to Droma. And I was like, oh, why are you putting up with this? Like, I know you need a ride, but do you need a ride this bad?
Yeah.
But once we get to Jedi Eclipse, you could really see how their partnership has grown, that Han is not lashing out at Droma, that they're sort of working together as a pair, that Han's still running away from his problems. Like, he's not reconciled with his family, but he's doing useful things. He's trying to track down Roa. He's trying to help Droma find his family. And I feel like the interplay between them was more equal in the second book. Like, didn't feel like, like Han had a chip on his shoulder and was taking it out on Droma. Like, Han's still not back to his normal self, but I liked their interplay together, like how they work together and because Droma, I was worried about him in book one, but in book two, you see like, oh, he's fine. He can deal with this. Like, I'm not worried about him anymore.
Correct me if I'm wrong. From what I remember, again, guys, for me, it's been over a decade since I read these books. His disposition, his like character type, he's more mellow, right, than Han. He's like quieter than Han. He's more like lenient than Han. He's not as like, chest beating kind of like warrior. I don't know why. I just remember from reading this book that I immediately was taken with his personality type. He was like, I sympathize with him, that he's looking for his family, that his culture is being ostracized from the rest of the galaxy for some reason that are not liked. Did you feel like he was, in a way, that Lucina was trying to pose him as Chewie's replacement, and for Han to be able to deal with those feelings, ask himself a question like, hey, is he going to be a replacement for Chewie or not?
Yeah, I think Droma, he's chill. I did get the same sense that you did that. Like he's mellow.
Right.
Part of why he's able to put up with Han in the first book is he's just sort of, he goes with the flow. Like, he's a funny guy, but he like calms Han down. And so I'm not sure if I saw Han and Droma be like a long-term thing, but that Droma was what Han needed at that point in time. Like he needed someone to dial him back, who would, take that verbal abuse and then just be like,
what are you doing, right?
would not respond to it. And I think too, there was a certain, I don't think Lucina was aware of this at the time, but there were a lot of fans who really wanted Han to reconcile with his family. And I do think that was an end goal. So I think Droma wasn't intended as like a long-term companion, but for as long as the authors wanted to use him, he would be there to play off of Han.
That's a very, very interesting observation. But would you agree with this statement that I felt that Droma would never be a substitute for Chewie, because Han is such a willful and strong personality type that the only way he can be truly invest his heart and soul into somebody who talks him down, who talks back to him and puts him in his place like Chewie could. And Droma doesn't do that, not nearly enough.
No, I feel like what Han and Chewie had was unique because in the Paradise Snare, the first Han Solo trilogy book, Han has a different companion. He's a big old cat dude, Merg.
Which I loved him.
I love Merg. But what Han and Chewie had was one of a kind, and it was also developed over all these books, over 3 movies. And so I think too that Droma serves a purpose, but I think once Han has moved beyond the tragedy of Chewie's death, he won't need Droma anymore.
Yeah. And it felt like Droma's heart and his purpose takes him somewhere else. He needed to be more with his people. And I think Lucina established it
in his family.
Right. Yeah. Lucina established that arc from the beginning to kind of point you the way that, hey, these two could be friends and respect each other and check in on one another, but they don't belong in the same cockpit because his destiny calls him this way, while Han, he belongs with the Skywalkers. Yeah. Let's keep going with the synopsis. We're almost over with the second book. So Han and Droma also join the fight. Ruth Skitter dies when Kip Duran he attempts to rescue him. Now enters one of the most despicable characters in Star Wars Expanded Universe, Han's old buddy cousin, Thraken San Solo. We see him in previous books. I love to hate that guy. And he exploits the Centerport station. He fires it. And in that attack, he wipes out the Vong fleet, but with it, he also destroys a major portion of the new allies, the Hapen cluster fleet. And in the end result, Prince Isolder is disgraced in this culture because of his move. Yeah. Droma's family is rescued and they're brought to a planet Duro. Once again, we find out that Vicky Shesh, who is deeply entrenched in the New Alliance politics, she is actually working with the Yuzang Vong. She's a double agent. She's working with infiltrator Nomanor. So my question is, did you feel, first and foremost, what was the shock? What was the realization of what Thraken San Solo has done? Was it an accomplishment or a complete failure?
It really felt like the end of Dark Tide, one of those Pyrrhic victories where, they destroyed the Balm fleet, but at what cost? You've decimated your allies who are not your allies anymore. It was one of those things where, especially afterwards, because Jason and Anakin were arguing, Anakin was like, let me fire center point station. And Jason's like, don't fire it. And then Thraken does, and he makes an absolute debacle of it. And then after that, we get a scene between Anakin and Jason where Anakin goes, I know that I could have fired and I would have hit only the Vaughn and none of the Hathens. And in my head, I was screaming, why did you not fire then? Why did you listen to Jason?
Yeah. But the thing is, we don't know. That's the most grueling part of it. That's something that we have to put up for the rest of our lives because there is no more new Jedi Order. It's done. The story is set in stone. Could have, would have, should have are the things that we constantly carry. It's the weight on our shoulders. And what could have been, we never know. And I think that also plays into the strength of the novel because we're dealing here with a very human emotion. And Lucino is a type of writer who never gives you satisfying answers. He is very much like Rian Johnson, who subverts your expectations.
Yeah.
And there is a reason why I bring Rian Johnson into this, because I wanted to ask your reaction, if you could remember, to the destruction of the Hapen fleet.
I was shocked. I was so shocked because going into it, they, reached agreement. They're going to send this fleet. And then Leia has this premonition of disaster, but it's not any more specific of that. She just knows, oh no. And she doesn't say anything because she doesn't have any specifics. She doesn't feel she can justify it.
Right.
So Leia's there, Isolde's there, they go. And yeah, that beam from Center Point Station just sort of like...
It is so unexpected and indiscriminately just kills. That's all it does. It's a weapon. And they're gone.
And the fact is, the Hapen fleet had been something that they had been building up for years. They are never going to be able to get it to that strength again. And you've watched all the hard work Leia's gone through. Isolde basically had a duel with a dude to get them to agree to send the fleet. And then they're there and just like 75% of them are wiped out in an instant. And I was like, I think that was another thing that made the Yuuzhan Vong conflict feel real to me because it was like, oh, they'll be okay. They've got the Hapens. No, the Hapens are gone. And yeah, they stopped them from attacking Fondor Station, but at what cost? Like it was
a very Game of Thrones moment there. And the reason I bring Rian Johnson is when I was watching The Last Jedi, which is my favorite of the new era Star Wars feature films, when that Haldo maneuver, like I didn't care for Haldo as a character much. I just didn't feel that they developed her well enough. But her sacrifice, at least, which a lot of people were arguing, hey, it should have been, Admiral Akbar. My point is, whoever is behind that cockpit, that driving that ship, which was one of the Resistance's last hopes for success, or at least escape, it's one of their vital resources, just drives to that New Order, First Order fleet. It just, pow! I was like, oh, Hapen fleet all over again. It's inadvertently seeing that cinematic image opened that gaping wound in my heart, crying for Hapen cluster, because the next question I want to ask you, you mentioned something that I was trying to allude to next. They have been developing the Hapis culture and Prince Isolde and all of that stuff for years. Do you feel that there's a required kind of a prerequisite reading that would double the effects of enjoyment of reading this duology?
Well, I just think to get an understanding of Isolde and his relationship with Leia, like you do really have to have, maybe if not read The Courtship of Princess Leia, at least know what happens there. That like, it was hard to get them to ally with the New Republic to begin with. It was quite a journey along the way. And that, they're allies of the New Republic, but they're very much on the outside. And that, like this is something that is hard to accomplish. And the fact that, they come out, they support them, and they're instantly, nope, turn around and go back home. You're just like, this is bad. Yeah. It did really, I would say Courtship of Princess Leia. I think if you haven't read any of the Legends books related to the Hapens, because they show up a lot in the Young Jedi Knights books, but Courtship of Princess Leia is really where you have to start with them.
I would say Courtship of Princess Leia. I would definitely encourage fans to read the Carillion trilogy because we learn who Thraken Sal Solo is.
And Centerpoint Station.
And Centerpoint Station, exactly, where he's coming from, and that there's no justification what he has done. And he might pose himself that he's working towards the people of Corellia and the Corellian sector, but he always fends for himself. He always tries to put his name there on the map. It's like, I did this. I am the guy. I delivered the victory. And just as you mentioned, I was going to bring this up. Kevin J. Anderson's Young Jedi Knights are some of my favorite series. Like, I have the entire collection over there in the back, but I also have this sealed collection of the first 3 books. Highly, highly recommended, because once again, we learn who Prince Isildur, who once courted Leia, but then becomes very close friend to the family, a genuine friend to the family. Even past this tragedy, I think he still remains Leia's loyal friend, but also his daughter.
Yes.
Tanel Ka. And we also learn about the Hapus hierarchy and how the women rule their society and the kind of dealings that they go through. And it makes you appreciate what sorts of efforts Isildur and Leia had to go through to get the Hapus fleet on their side and double the effect of that devastation. When you read it, like, oh my God, what is this? I just wanted to choke Draken Sunsol with my hands and not feel sorry for him. You know? Last question that I have pertaining this specific book, and then we'll close up with a general question, is, so in this specific novel, Vector Prime was sort of kind of like sensing our first steps towards the attack, the planning stage. And then we had the first duology of books which focused with the first strike. Now we're here in this duology dealing with open warfare versus spy games, because you have Vicky Shesh and Nomanor planning things, and Leia and Isildur and the Hapus fleet going full force, full on. So you have war on all fronts happening there. How did you feel about this? Was it a puzzle that you had to put together to try to just comprehend what is happening on that epic scale?
I liked how it opened things up, that it wasn't just like, military might, that the Yuuzhan Vong are attacking the New Republic militarily. They've got spies, they've got collaborators now who are garbage people, but willing to help them. And it opens the story up even more. So, like, this is not just a military invasion anymore. This is now like, they're getting politicians to side with them, and how will that affect the stories going forward? It just, it felt like it made the story even bigger. Like, there are more things to think about and to consider. The Vong have opened up now, so we're not just dealing with the warriors, we're dealing with the priests. And so it just, like, the new Jedi Order feels bigger. And sometimes I do struggle with keeping everything in place, but I do enjoy how the story is opening up at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely warrants several rereads. I'm currently listening it on audiobooks, but I feel that the books are greatly scaled down. They cut a lot of stuff out, and I just don't enjoy the lack of nuance. But it's definitely the series that you want to reread just to pick up on all the fun details. And also when you have full story and you go delve into it, just witnessing how things were set up. Once again, it's a perfect example of when Star Wars current fans are asking, hey, was Legends ever canonized, or was there any kind of concerted effort to bring it all together? I'm like, heck yeah. Especially New Jedi Order. It's so well planned. Especially, it has some of the grandest scale action and storytelling I've ever seen in fiction. It's just literally galaxy sweeping event. And there's so many things at play here, from planets to individuals, that are happening. It's mind boggling. But to bring it all home, Meg, in general, how would you summarize the events of the Agents of Chaos duology? And the same question as I asked you in our last podcast, before we move on to our next podcast, where we are in the galaxy right now after this duology is over. So first of all, summarize both books. What did you get out of them? And second part of the question is where we are in the galaxy here.
Yeah. So for the Agents of Chaos duology, one of the big things I got was that Han's journey is not one book and done. Han is going to be dealing with his grief for a long time. That, where we leave him at the end of Hero's Trial, he's still not ready to get back with his family. And where we leave him at the end of Jedi Eclipse, he's reunited Droma with his family, and he's going off with Droma's family. Like, he's still not willing to talk to Leia and to talk to his kids and figure out what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
And also just that, I think that while Dark Tide showed us that you can't reason with the Valm, that you can't have a conversation with them and get them to turn aside. Mm-hmm. And Agents of Chaos just really reiterates that, they're not willing to win just by military might, that they want to wipe people out, that they'll use these collaborators for now, but we know they don't consider them equals. And where we leave the state of the galaxy at the end of Jedi Eclipse is just that, holy crap, this is really real. Yeah. That, if the New Republic can't get their stuff together, they're gonna lose really fast. Like, it's not even been a year. It's been 6 months. And then a few months after that for Jedi Eclipse, and they're falling this fast. Like, their strategy doesn't work. They're going to need to reevaluate it, or things are going to get even worse.
Yeah, totally. I would summarize the Agents of Chaos in general that, to me, it showed many things. First of all, it illustrated that this war happens on many fronts. Once again, if we think of World War II, there's going to be war of attrition. There's going to be grand stratagems and individual tactics that work and don't work. It's going to be a lot of coercion. There's going to be a lot of politics and spy games. There's going to be individuals on both sides, which show each culture from many angles, both on the New Alliance and this galaxy, and both the Yuzong Vong. Yuzong Vong, to me, begins to open up here in this duology and show us that there's a complex structure going on there, and they're not just all military guys who are like, yes sir, no sir, like Borg in Star Trek, who just listen to commands. They have separate agendas. They have characters like this priestess who worships a trickster goddess that she doesn't care what the military tells her. It's like, no, I have my ways of accomplishing things. And later on, we'll see in future podcasts as we discuss future books, even you can make overtures of friendships, and you begin to see that's like, it begins something from the professional standpoint. Okay, I'm a doctor, I'm a surgeon, you're a surgeon. Okay, we connect on this level. I'm Vong, you're a human. Okay, there's that connection, but then, maybe you can see things from my perspective too, why we mutilate ourselves and why we carve these intricate tattoos on our bodies. You can understand that? Holy cow. Maybe we're not as different as our higher-ups pretend us or want make us to believe. So, in general, this duology just continued amazing world building and telling us who these Vongs are. For some reason, it eludes me. I don't know why. In the middle of a conversation, I'm trying to remember Worf's species. Please help me. Star Trek, Worf.
Oh, he's a Klingon.
Klingons. Oh my gosh. Klingons are arguably some of the most developed alien species in fiction in general. You hear their war songs. You hear about their Valhalla-like place that the warriors go into. You have Worf, who is raised by a Russian family on Earth, but he wants to also have a place in the politics among his peoples. It is so complex. Same is happening with Vong. If in the beginning of the series we're like, they're just intergalactic video game-like species who have biotech that you would find in like a role-playing games and something, now powerful writers like James Luceno are setting in stone. They're telling you, no, something deeper is happening here. This is a very well-structured, well-developed series from Star Wars, and just it kept on giving the goodies. Any closing thoughts before we part, Meg?
No, I think that's it. We've talked a lot about the Agents of Chaos duology, and I think it's, especially for people who read the Dark Tide duology and are wondering like, what's going on with Han, you have to check this out. But also just how it brings you to like the state of the galaxy and everything that's gone on. Like, you can't skip it.
Definitely. Do you feel that there's potential for both you and I are reading Star Wars: The High Republic because yes, we dip into the both plates. We sample a little bit of Legends. We sample a little bit of canon. It's possible. Star Wars fans actually do it. And if I not to speak for yourself, but I think we're both enjoying it. Do you feel that High Republic has that potential to reach that epic scope of storytelling?
I think so. I think for High Republic, almost just the sheer quantity of content works against it a little because, it's very ambitious. They've got books for 3 different, well, I guess technically 4 different audiences. They've got comics for adults and kids. But I do think that as the story grows, it can get more of a grand scale. It's like not extragalactic invaders, but it is like the biggest threat the Republic has seen at this point. So,
and it's unfair to compare because obviously the High Republic is not complete yet. But how would you compare them in terms of quality?
I would say for the High Republic, there's a lot more focus on Jedi compared to the new Jedi Order. Well,
no, it's obviously called Jedi Order, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so much going on there.
Yeah. And so, but there's also other characters too. I think the way that it's written for different age levels means that, the new Jedi Order was just adult books, but with the High Republic series, since they're written for adults and teens and, middle grade readers, you could really jump into it at any age and gain an understanding of what's happening.
Yeah. I think, the way I'm personally taking it, I'm treating the High Republic adult books specifically as something akin to the new Jedi Order. And the rest of the books, like the young adult novels, even comic books, are more of a supplementary read. Yes, they build the world for you, but they're not crucial events that kind of a must read to understand this series. So what I was really, really pleased with, and I'm completely taken with, and I absolutely adore, is that I haven't read the last adult book yet, The Fallen Star. I read the first 2. They're mind-blowingly good. They're so well conceptualized, connected with one another. I think it has to do also with modern day technology, how writers and Lucasfilm interact with one another. Because, New Jedi Order is written 20 odd years ago, besides emails and phone conferences, unless you're there on Star Wars, Lucas Ranch writing all together, which I don't believe those authors were. It was a lot harder. And you could tell sometimes that between the books, there was a little bit of a dissonance between the ideas that authors wanted to pull off, but they were still guided along this one narrow New Jedi Order corridor, trying to putting them together. It's still executed very well, but you still feel a little bit more of a diverging tastes, diverging aesthetic styles, where the High Republic, it feels like one solid book. Like, holy crap. When you pick up with Stellan Gaius from one book to the next one, like, oh yeah, that's Stellan Gaius. There's no doubt or shadow of a doubt that it's a new treatment of a character, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think definitely, like you said, just being now where you can just chat with someone online, be like, it probably helps that so much where, they'll talk to each other about the characters. And in the new Jedi Order, it was like they would email each other and then have to wait for a reply. And so just the way that we can instantly communicate now, I think helps these multi-author series a lot more.
When I was fortunate to interview Kenneth Flint, his novel was one of the first Bantam era books that were supposed to launch along the side of Courtship of Princess Leia, Throne Trilogy, and so forth. He said, I had to call Lucasfilm and ask them for technology and ship names, and we're like, we don't have them. And actually, one of the sources that supplied him with a lot of information that he needed was West End Games that developed Star Wars RPG games, which for me, it's the biggest question mark. It's one area of Star Wars that I know the least. But he told me that it's like a lot of us, you would have like a conference phone call once a month or like once every 2 weeks, and that's it. And the only thing that he said that supposedly George Lucas firsthand commented on his concept on the book, The Heart of the Jedi, right? The unpublished book here, that self-plug that I'm giving away on the channel here. And you have a copy as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So in here, what he was saying is that the only thing that George Lucas insisted upon is that when he was writing the Tusken Raiders, that they be masked, that never unmask them. They're supposed to stay mysterious. But anyway, guys, well, the point is that sometimes you have to appreciate this new Jedi Order series from the way that it was written, how it was developed, and still it felt very connected. I would say we both agreed it felt like one huge storyline. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Before we leave, Meg, would you kindly remind us what your channel is, where people can find your awesome stuff?
Yeah. I am on YouTube as Meg Reviews. I'm on Instagram as The Meg Reviews. And I also my reviews, I'll post a written version on Goodreads as well, if you would rather read than watch.
As always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and joining us today. Meg, it's absolute pleasure to talk with you all the time. You're such a passionate Star Wars fan and you know so much. If you enjoyed this video, guys, please go over to Meg's channel, subscribe, support her as much as you like. She's really awesome. She knows her stuff. And we'll catch you guys next time because we will continue discussing New Jedi Order, hopefully finish all 19 books, and just give you an inside look of two Star Wars fans who don't necessarily always share the same opinion. We just want to demonstrate to you guys that we could sit down, have a conversation, and have our own likes and dislikes, and show you just how multifaceted Star Wars fandom is. And we'll catch you guys next time. Take care, everybody.